Listen to news updates on Ebonade 103.5 FM immediately after Angeles 6 o'clock a.m. and 6 o'clock p.m. weekdays. Stay tuned to be updated, to be informed. News updates, live reports. Ebonade FM breaks the news with actualities.
And the link that if we are hoping for Radio Nigeria,
you can as well listen online via mixlr.com/GistFM.
Good evening and welcome to Abona, the 103.5 FM News Update. Today, Wednesday, the first day of February 2023. And the time is a minute past the hour of 6. Martin Ifanshuku Ekezie is my name. The headlines. Atiku, PDP will industrialize their pockets, not Nigeria, Tinubu tells Anambra supporters. Imo government organizes one-day workshop for journalists, charges practitioners on objective reportage. Nigeria moves up 4 places to rank 150 on Corruption Perception Index. Anglican bishop under attack for kneeling before Enugu PDP Guba candidate. Mba. Bimbo, court remands Ikechukwu Ogbonna in prison over alleged manslaughter. Hands off Africa, Pope blasts foreign plundering of Congo. Now, details. Atiku, PDP will industrialize their pockets, not Nigeria, Tinubu tells Anambra supporters. Presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, APC, for the February 25th general election, Ahmed Bola Tinubu campaigned in Oka, Anambra State on Tuesday and promised to make the state an industrial hub of the country if elected. Addressing a mammoth crowd at the Alex Ekweme Square, the venue of the rally, Tinubu, who was accompanied by his running mate, Kashim Shettima, the Director General of his campaign organization, Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State, Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma, Kano State Governor Abdullahi Ganduje, and other top officials of the campaign council also promised to tackle the gully erosion menace that is devastating most communities in Anambra State. He said, "You know me and you know what I can do. I tamed the Atlantic Ocean in Lagos and I can do a similar thing in Anambra. We will check out paying jobs and be useful to themselves." I started paying WAEC fees for every student in Lagos. Whether you are Igbo or Yoruba or Hausa, I will be fair to all Nigerians if I become president. He promised to work with the Anambra State Governor, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, whom he described as a very brilliant man if he is elected president of Nigeria, recalling that he also discovered another Anambra son, Mr. Ben Akubweze, who worked with him in Lagos and is presently the presidential advisor on budget. He urged the Nigerian electorate not to listen to those he described as lying politicians. He added, "How long will it take them to lie from Port Harcourt to Onitsha, Onitsha to Aba? For 16 years, PDP lied to the nation that they will industrialize Nigeria, but they industrialized their pockets." One person said he is the candidate of the North, and I urge voters not to listen to him. There will be hope, joy, prosperity, and progress if you vote APC, and I urge eligible voters to collect their PVCs and vote for Asiwaju, he declared. Imo government organizes one-day workshop for journalists, charges practitioners on objective reportage. Members of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, NUJ, Imo State Council have been enjoined to always report objectively in their daily news writings. Imo State Governor Senator Hope Uzodinma gave this charge while speaking at one-day professional development workshop for practicing journalists in the state. Uzodinma, who was represented by the Commissioner of Information and Strategy, Declan Emelumba, noted that media practitioners in Imo have always been appreciated since the inception of the Shared Prosperity Administration. My administration is a media-friendly one. I have carried journalists across in the state scheme of things and are partners in progress, he stated. Speaking on the theme, upgrading strategic communication competencies in the digital era, a professor of mass communication at the Imo State University, Owerri, Professor Iman Owu Amalam, spoke on the strategies a journalist should know in order to communicate effectively. In his speech, the chairman, Imo Council of Nigerian Union of Journalists, NUJ, Comrade Ifeanyi Nwanguma, thanked the governor, Senator Uzodinma, for supporting journalists in the state. He said there is need to embrace the skills of digital times in order to transact in the current trends. The ceremony, which took place at the new Nigerian Union of Journalists Secretariat, had in attendance media practitioners from various mediums. Nigeria moves up 4 places to rank 150 on Corruption Perception Index. The Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CIRAC, and Transparency International, TI, on Tuesday released the 2022 Corruption Perception Index, CPI, indicating that Nigeria ranked 150 out of 180 countries. The Executive Directive, CIRAC, TI Nigeria, Awal Rafsanjani, who disclosed this during a press conference in Abuja, revealed that Nigeria scored 24 out of 100 points in the 2022 CPI compared to 24 points in the 2021 CPI. Rafsanjani said in the country comparison for the 2022 CPI, Nigeria ranks 150 out of 180 countries compared to 154 on the 2021 CPI results. He said today Transparency International released the 2022 Corruption Perception Index, CPI, published exclusively in Nigeria by the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISCLC, TI Nigeria. The index reveals that Nigeria scored 24 out of 100 points in the 2022 CPI compared to 24 points in the 2021 CPI. The CPI for Nigeria aggregates data from 8 different sources that provide perceptions by country experts and business people on the level of corruption in the public sector. While the index does not show specific incidences of corruption in the country, it includes the perception of corruption in Nigeria. The index is impartial, objective, and globally acknowledged as the most widely used cross-country parameter for measuring corruption. Rafsanjani stressed that the 2022 CPI was not an assessment of Nigeria's anti-graft agencies who have made commendable efforts in the fight against corruption in the country. The CPI is usually released at the beginning of the year, with the previous 2 CPI released in 25th of January 2022 and the 28th of January 2021, respectively. The CPI result comes less than a month to the Nigeria's general elections, which are crucial not just to Nigeria, but Africa. While Nigeria had high expectations that this regime could address corruption, the CPI index for the country has remained consistently low in the last 10 years. Anglican bishop under attack for kneeling candidate Mba. An Anglican bishop, Right Reverend Onyeka Onya, of the Nike Diocese in Enugu State, has come under verbal attack after kneeling before Barrister Peter Mba, the People's Democratic Party (PDP) gubernatorial candidate in the state, during a church service. The video of the incident has surfaced on the internet. The incident reportedly occurred during a Thanksgiving service in honor of Venerable Professor Chinedu Nebo, former Minister of Power and Steel. In the video, Mba was said to have arrived late during the church service and opted to sit at the rear part of the church. The bishop approached him and pleaded that he relocate to the front row and offered the governorship candidate declined, with Mba choosing to remain at the back row. Bishop Onya went on his knees to make him change his mind, but Mba, who looked stunned in the video, also went on his knees. A bewildered priest, who appears to be a chaplain to the bishop, and another congregant were seen pulling the bishop up. Correspondent reports that the development has not gone down well with many Anglican faithfuls. They are currently venting their anger, with many of them describing the bishop's actions as a total disbasement of the office of a bishop. Bimbo Court remands Ikechukwu Ogbonna in prison over alleged manslaughter. A Lagos State Magistrate Court has remanded Mr. Ikechukwu Ogbonna, husband of the late Mrs. Bimbo Ogbonna, in prison on a charge of alleged manslaughter. Bimbo died following a severe burns inflicted on her in a fire incident at their home, while her husband, rather than call for rescue, was seen video recording the burning house from outside the premises. Despite this sad development, Mr. Ogbonna was still allowed to breathe the air of freedom until Men Against Rape Foundation (MAF) raised alarm on November 24, 2022, via a press conference held in Abuja. At the said press conference, Executive Director of MAF, Lemi Uhegbe, had exhibited persuasive and compelling evidence sufficient for Lagos State to arrest and charge Mr. Buhariborrowsmomey also decried the nonchalance of the police and Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Agency for not responding timelessly and appropriately to several former complaints by Bimbo against her husband over serial abuses despite compelling evidence. He also faulted the charge of negligence leveled against Ogbonna and called for a more serious charge that matches the severity of his act. Bimbo's family, through their counsel, Barrister Odiana Eriata, wrote the Lagos State Command demanding a review of the charge of negligence as it fell short of expectation of law. It was in what appears to be a response. The Lagos State Director of Public Prosecution reviewed the charge upward by slamming on Mr. Ogbonna the charge of manslaughter, punishable under Section 229 of the Criminal Law of Lagos State. When the matter came up today before Magistrate Court 7, presided over by Mrs. Adebayo Kafayat Teller in the Yaba Magistrate District, holding at the Court 7 Ebutemeta, she ordered that he be remanded in prison until March 7th. She refused the bail request by Mr. Ogbonna's lawyer Abubakar Yusuf. Ogbonna is facing a fresh charge of involuntary manslaughter contrary to Section 224B and punishable under Section 229 of Criminal Law of Lagos State. If found guilty, Ogbonna will be facing life imprisonment. Now we move over to the foreign scene. Hands off Africa. Pope blasts foreign plundering of Congo. May the world acknowledge the catastrophic things that were done over the centuries to the detriment of the local peoples, Francis said in his speech in the resource-rich but war-ridden country. Pope Francis addresses attendees at the Palace de la Nation in Kinshasa's Democratic Republic of Congo. Aid group are hoping Francis' trip will shine a spotlight on two of the world's forgotten conflicts and rekindle international attention on some of the Africa's worst humanitarian crises amid donor fatigue and new aid priorities in Ukraine. Tisa Fabi. Francis began a 6-day visit to Congo and South Sudan on Tuesday, aiming to bring a message of peace to two countries riven by poverty, conflict, and what Francis has called a lingering colonialist mentality that still considers Africa ripe for exploitation. Hands off the Democratic Republic of Congo, hands off Africa, the Pope said in the Garden of Palace de la Nation in Kinshasa soon after landing. May Africa be the protagonist of its own destiny, Francis added. But Francis' trip will also bring him face to face with the future of Catholic Church. Africa is one of the only places in the world where the Catholic flock is growing in terms of practicing faithful as well as fresh vocations to the priesthood and religious life. That makes his trip his fifth to African continent in his 10-year pontificate. All the more important as Francis seeks to make his mark on reshaping the church as a field hospital for wounded souls, where all are welcome and poor people have a special pride of place. Yes, Africa is in turmoil and is also suffering from the invasion of exploiters, Francis told Associated Press in an interview last week, but he said the church can also learn from the continent and its people. Congolese faithfuls were flocking to Kinshasa for Francis' main event, a mass, on Wednesday at Ndulu Airport that is expected to draw as many as 2 million people in one of the biggest gatherings of its kind in Congo and one of France's biggest masses ever. This is where we draw the curtain on news update on Ebona Ade 103.5 FM. But before we leave, a quick look at the headlines. Article: PDP will industrialize their pockets, not Nigeria, Tinubu tells Anambra supporters. Imo government organizes one-day workshop for journalists, charges practitioners on objective reportage. Nigeria moves up 4 places to rank 150 on Corruption Perception Index. Anglican bishop under attack for kneeling before Enugu PDP Guba candidate Mba. Bimbo court remands Ikechukwu Ogbonna in prison over alleged manslaughter. Hands off Africa, Pope blasts foreign plundering of Congo. You just listen to News of M. News produced and read by Martin Ifeanyi Ekeze. Thank you for listening. Once again, good evening.
Listen to news updates on Ebonade 103.5 FM immediately after Angeles 6 o'clock a.m. and 6 o'clock p.m. weekdays. Stay tuned to be updated, to be informed. News updates, live reports. Ebonade FM brings the news with actuality.
The link that if we are looking for a new Nigeria.
You can as well listen online via mixlr.com/gistfm.
Igbo na-ekwu na-asị na-ama mma site n'ụlọ wee pụba n'iro. N'eziokwu, ezinụlọ bụ mgbọrọgwụ ji ihe ọbụla a na-eme n'obodo dị iche iche. Ọ bụrụ na ezinụlọ adịghị mma, obodo agaghị